Good morning. My name is Jennifer Ryan, and on behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today is titled Executive Presence with Angela Nuttle, will last approximately 1 hour and is a pre-recorded webinar being broadcasted today, Thursday, January 13th, 2022. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2022 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, support, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. Please be sure to head to the AWWC website for all upcoming virtual events. We are excited to be hosting webinars and collaboration sessions throughout 2022. The Alliance will also be hosting 4 main in-person events. Be sure to check back on our website for registration details. If you cannot make one of our live, virtual, or in-person events, don't worry. Webinars and our 4 main events will be recorded and on demand for our followers. Our theme this year is Acknowledge, Adjust, Advance. We will be diving into more detail around why we picked this theme and what's in store for 2022. I'm also excited to share with you today that in 2022, the AWWC will be hosting a book club throughout the year. Love reading books? We will be releasing more information on this in the coming weeks. Today, we are hosting this pre-recorded session from our 2021 RISE event as we focused on the important topic of executive presence. Hear from keynote speaker Angela Nuttle as she teaches us how to tap into our power and lead from a place where our authentic selves and core values are deeply rooted. Angela Nuttle is the founder of the School of Executive Presence. She is a 25-year corporate leader turned business owner who went from sacrificing, surviving, and proving herself to realizing her potential and getting serious about business results. A working mom of 3, she has figured out how to balance motherhood, marriage, and a whole life outside of work. Although this is a pre-recorded session, please feel free to comment and ask questions throughout the Zoom feature seen on your screen. We love seeing our followers engaged throughout our session. Thank you for the time you're spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
Well, hello, everybody. How are you? Awesome. I am so grateful to be here, and let me tell you why. I'm so happy that all of us are coming out from behind Zoom. And how many of us here right now, this is the first time that you have ventured out and you're not wearing your jammy pants for a meeting? Yeah, I miss those jammy pants. How many of you, for the first time since the pandemic, this is the first time that you're coming out to an event? Is anybody? A few of you, yeah. How many of you ladies, this is the first time that you've put on heels in a long time? Right. And how many of those ladies you brought flats with you? All right, we have something in common. Well, I'm Angie Nuttle, and not only am I an executive business coach and an author and a speaker, but I'm also a visibility, influence, and presence expert. I've learned the hard way about executive presence, and I'm going to share a story with you about that. I'm going to tell you as much as I possibly can in the next hour about executive presence and how you influence people in the business world, and do it in a way that it is authentic to you. So what would you do if you were me right now? If you were up on this stage right now and you were going to give a message, what would that message be? What would be so important that you would come up here and you would speak about? What would your word of importance be? If you could take any particular word that embodies who you are as a person and what your message is, what would that be? Well, my word today comes from the Queen of Soul herself. Anyone want to take a guess at what that word might be? Respect. That's right. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. How many of you saw the movie? Retha. I had to go see her. This is a woman who I just absolutely fell in love with many years ago, with her passion and with her soul and her authenticity. But the word respect goes way beyond singing a song. It goes way beyond that. Respect is something that we, as people in business, we long for that. We long to show up at work every day and be respected. Be respected for our ideas, who we are as humans. We long to be respected. And I want to tell you that words are connectors. Words and your word of importance, is what is going to connect you to the next person. So I want us to think about the importance of words in the next hour. And what words are you speaking that are important? There's a proverb that I live by. And that proverb is, death and life are in the power of the tongue. We can speak life into a situation, we can speak life to a person, and we can also keep our mouth shut and not speak anything and just put it to death. This is the most powerful weapon that you have, the most powerful tool that you have in business. And I want to show you how to use it influentially so that you can accomplish what you're designed to the calling that you are called to in business. So I'm going to share a few good secrets with you. I'm going to talk about 3 particular things. First of all, I'm going to share some tidbits of research. I spent a number of years researching executive presence, just being in the corporate world. I was in the corporate world for over 20 years. And so I want to share what I found out about that and how that influences how I work with people today. I also want to share with you common obstacles that get in the way, particularly for women, gentlemen also, but mainly for us ladies. And I want us to be aware of those obstacles so that we can do something about them. And then I want to share what you can do to start influencing when you walk out of this room today. All right. Well, I didn't learn executive presence like the typical person. There are a lot of people out there who have opinions about it, a lot of people who have written about it. But everything that I learned about executive presence, I learned in Iraq. It was unusual for a woman like me to raise your hand to go overseas to a war zone. It was unusual. And people really didn't accept that. But I'm going to tell you that when 9/11 happened, something woke up in me. That word of importance, respect, woke up for me. I'm also a woman of faith, and I value freedom. And so with those 3 words of importance woken up for me, I knew that I had to go to Iraq. I went over as an HR defense contractor, and I was excited. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do something for my country. I don't know about you, but I was mad when 9/11 happened. I was mad. Someone had violated our boundaries. Someone had disrespected us, and that hit a sore point with me. So when I got on a C-31 plane headed to Iraq, I had all of these dreams and visions of how I was going to help our country. But I'm going to tell you, the moment that we hit the ground and it was all sand and it was 120 degrees outside, and I was only one of 16 females on the base, it started to hit me, oh my gosh, what have I done? It was frightening. It was scary. Going through the Baghdad airport, our guide said, don't make eye contact with anybody. Just keep your head down. They're not used to seeing women like you. Keep your head down, and let's just get out of here. And our goal is to get to the bus. And I'm going to tell you, I'm just so curious. I had to look up and peek a little bit to see what was going on. But what I saw was very scary. I saw Iraqi soldiers with their guns staring a hole in me. And I'm going to tell you that I had to remind myself, why am I here? Why am I here? I'm here because of respect, faith, and freedom. That's why I'm here. Those words of importance. So I got to my base, and immediately I was made to understand that I was not welcome there. I was not in danger, well, I was in danger, but I wasn't so frightened over the fact that I had to wear 50 pounds of protective gear everywhere that I went while rockets and mortars were flying over our heads on the base, and that really did happen. It was a frightening situation that really made me say, oh Lord, keep me safe. But what was even scarier was the opposition that I got from my own male colleagues. And they let me know that I didn't need to be there, that I should be at home. I should be at home taking care of a family, but I was not welcome here. So for the next 30 days, I was stalked, my work was sabotaged, I was cussed out, and it was the most horrific experience that I had ever felt. I had never felt so unprotected and so vulnerable. And I'm going to tell you that the confident Angie was nowhere to be found. It was frightening. I recoiled. I just wanted to stay below the radar. I did not want to get stun-gunned. And then one night, I was walking back from work to my tent. And by the way, I had to walk through a Turkish truck camp every night in order to get to my tent. And I was on my tent, and I was on an odd shift. And so I was alone, and I was the only one in my tent. And one night, I got to my tent. It was very dark, and I was attacked. Well, the good news is that I had my combat boots, and they did their job. They did their job that night, and I managed to scare my attacker away. 6 other females had left the prior week because of the same thing happening. So it was a very real threat. It was very frightening. But at that moment, something woke up in me that said, you know what? I cannot walk around being afraid. I cannot walk around being afraid. And so I learned 2 things about my male colleagues, or any colleague. Never answer a fool according to his folly. This was an important proverb for me because what it was telling me was that no matter how that person was behaving in front of me, no matter how they were talking to me, that my job was to align with those words of importance. And that means that no matter what, I needed to be respecting that person. And what I realized is that those people in front of me, they were just as scared as I was. And this was their way of processing that. And so I began listening to them instead. I started reflecting back what they were saying. No matter how they were talking to me, I was talking to them respectfully. And I was being a partner with them instead of cowering back and trying to avoid them. The second thing that I learned is that people basically need three things. They need you to respect them. They also need you to acknowledge them. And they also need you to validate them. Those are basic needs that we all have. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or a child or even a dog or a cat. Respect, acknowledgement, and validation. That's what we all need. What's important about this is that when you get in front of people, it really is about relationship. It's about understanding the person in front of you and tapping into what is important to them and being able to hear them and be fully present with them. I learned a lot of coping mechanisms while I was in Iraq, and I'm going to share some of those with you shortly. But let me just tell you this. By the time I left Iraq, I was so curious about influence and how decisions were being made that I came back to the States. I eventually came back. I was there for 3 years, and I began researching executive presence. Now, I mentioned that I spent about 20 years in corporate, and Iraq was somewhere at the beginning, sort of middle of that. But once I got into the corporate environment, I saw decisions being made about people that make you scratch your head, right? How many of you have seen people just move into positions where they could be an influencer and you're saying, how did they get there? You know, how did that person get there? Yeah. Well, I would challenge that it is because they know how to influence, they know how to tap into executive presence, and they know a thing or two about something that we call social agility. So I want to share the research with you, and first of all, let's just say I found this research tidbit, and it was pretty powerful. 89% of CEOs, business leaders, and executive coaches say that you have to have it. Now, what is it? It's executive presence. In this journal, this scholarly journal that one of 100 at least journal entries that I had read just studying this, I just found out that business leaders and CEOs, their decisions are very emotionally based, just like our decisions are very emotionally based. And so their summation was that you have to have executive presence in order to move into positions where you can be successful and you can influence. And of course, we can argue all day about what the definition of success is, but being able to move into positions that are strategic and you can influence. So what is executive presence? Well, I'm going to tell you that it's not in the dictionary, so I looked up both of the words, and this totally makes sense. Executive, the power to put plans, actions, or laws into effect. That's what the definition says in the dictionary. Presence, the state or fact of existing, occurring, or being present. It's just being present with people. It's just being present with the person that's in front of you. Well, there are 10 characteristics that floated to the top in all of the research that I did. These are the first 5. These are what we call short-term characteristics. That means that when you meet someone, there is an impression that is made right away. And before a person is even really thinking about just thinking about a conscious thought. They're actually walking through a checklist in their mind about you. You're a walking reality TV show. Did you know that? What would your show be called? It's one to think about. So these 5 characteristics, confidence, communication, engagement, your status, and that also means just credibility, and your physical appearance. You'll notice that there are percentages by these. And these are the number of CEOs, or the percentage of CEOs, business leaders, and executive business coaches. What characteristics are the highest? So I want to test this out. I want to give you a chance to assess yourself. And so we're going to do something in a moment. You will want to have your phone out. But here's the truth. You've got 1 minute to influence. When you're meeting somebody for the first time, you're having that initial interaction, you've got 1 minute to leave an impression. And that impression sticks. As a matter of fact, if you make an impression and it's not a positive one, it takes 28 positive interactions to undo that negative interaction. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to say hello. I want you to say hello with your phone. And I want you to do it in 60 seconds or less. Now, we can do this a couple of different ways. You can speak to someone else and introduce yourself, and you can record yourself, or you can hand your phone, if you feel safe about this, you can hand your phone to someone else and have them record you introducing yourself. Now, I'm not just talking about, hey. I'm talking about, hi, my name is Angie Nuttle. I'm an executive business coach who teaches business people how to show up with executive presence. Talk about you. Talk about yourself. And I also want you, in that minute, I want you to identify your word of importance. Now, we're going to have to be very efficient with this, and I know that since you are in workers' comp and in the HR arena, that you're very good at being efficient. All right, so on the count of 3, I want you to get your phone out, say hello. You can talk to someone, or you can talk to yourself. If you don't feel like being social today, you're more of an introvert, you can go and talk to yourself. That's fine. But I want you to capture yourself on camera. Ready? Go. If you're working with a partner, you should switch. Okay, so let's be bringing that to a close. All right. 10 seconds and we need to close. All right, so how did that go? How's that going? All right, let's come back. Let's come back. Come back. Everybody come back. All right. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, ding. Wow, it sounds like you all had fun. And now you have something to remember this session by. All right, well, I wanted you to record that. One of the things that I do when I'm working with clients is I have them record themselves, and then I do what I call an executive presence analysis. So I analyze them for body language. I look at their visual, vocal, and verbal output. So you're going to learn a little bit about that today. But I want to share with you 3 common but critical boo-boos that we tend to make when we're introducing ourselves. And this is in the vein of that short-term impression. So first of all, leading with your job description and position, omitting your last name in an introduction, and minimizing the key truths about yourself. So let's take a moment to talk about this. Leading with your job description and position. Let me just bottom line this. You are more than your job title. You are more than the job description that you were given the day that you started with your company. And you have 60 seconds to let the person know in front of you who you are, what you do, and what value you bring. And so omitting your last name is also shortchanging yourself. How many people in here are named Ann? If your name is Ann, raise your hand. How many of you are named Mike? Right, so if I say, hey, I'm Mike, well, that would be weird. But if I were to say, hey, I'm Ann, hey, I'm Cher, Cher and Bono, they can get away with, and Charo, they can get away with that. But when you introduce yourself with your first and last name, people are more likely to remember one of those names. And also minimizing the key truths about yourself. In that first minute, people, they want to know who you are. They really want to know who you are. They want to know if they can know, like, and trust you. So I want to encourage you that when the session is over, go back and watch your video and ask yourself, did I do these things? And what can I do to bring more of me into this first 60 seconds? All right, let's talk about the second set of characteristics. These are the more long-term types of characteristics that showed up in the top 10. Values in action, you'll see that says 97.2%. So when we talk about values in action, it is the most important and the most critical characteristic for executive presence. And you may be asking, well, what does that mean? Values in action has to do with being your authentic self, but also living in alignment with your values. When you are living in alignment with your values, then you are a unique piece of art. You're not a copy. You're not trying to be like someone else. You really are being true to yourself. I do also want to point out here coerciveness. This was a strange word that came up in the research, but I found it over and over and over in the research that I did. And what I've come to the conclusion about coerciveness is that it's very similar to being assertive, but there is a scale. So I'm from Indianapolis. How many of you know Bobby Knight? Okay, how many of you know Richard Simmons? Those are the scales, okay? So Bobby Knight over here is coercive at the bully stage. And then over here, we've got Richard Simmons, woo! Yeah, he's like, there's no coerciveness whatsoever. So I wanted to point that out because that seems to be the one that's most controversial in terms of the characteristics. But the two that get you the most bang for your buck is these two: confidence and values in action. This is what I call your influence equation. When you put most of your energy working on building your confidence and having a mindset of confidence, and you are working towards being in alignment with your values, you are more likely to influence people around you. This is an interesting research tidbit that I had to pull out, especially for this conference, because women in particular seem to be challenged with that influence equation. And there are a number of reasons for that. I mean, we as women, in many cases, I talk to many women and I work with a lot of different women, and mindset is a challenge. They're struggling with just always having to prove themselves and always trying to be something that maybe they weren't designed to be in order to fit in. So in the research, in a study of over 2,000 people who were identified as having executive presence by CEOs, business leaders, and executive coaches, only 27% identified were actually women. So that tells me that there is evidence that we have some work to do. And it's not anybody's challenge except for our own. We have the opportunity to build our own presence. And so I set out to discover, well, what exactly are those obstacles? What are the obstacles that get in the way of us as women, that keep us from really influencing at the level that we want to, no matter who's in the room? Well, here are the 4 culprits right here: needing to control, needing to prove ourselves, needing to belong, and needing to be needed. When we talk about control, at the heart of this is the fear of ambiguity, the fear of not knowing, the fear of something surprising happening. We don't like it. I don't know about you, but I'm a mom who is a control freak. I want my kid home when I want her, and she's in competitive swim and she's in marching band, and I'm going crazy because I can't control her schedule, right? And so sometimes we let that really get the best of us, needing to prove ourselves. And sometimes we women, we think that we have to do more than everybody else to show that we're competent. And so we'll do the extra work. We'll stay the extra hours to our own detriment. And so we end up crossing our own boundaries. And then belonging. You know, it's a big thing right now to belong to a tribe. We're hearing that quite a bit. But the problem comes in is when we're trying to prove ourselves and control, and we're trying to belong, and then we might not speak up because it might not look like the rest of the tribe. And being needed. So I want to go back to Iraq, and I want to share another story with you of where all 4 of these obstacles came to a head for me in 2006. A couple of years had passed since I went through that very traumatic experience at my base at Al-Assad. I moved on, I got my bearings, and I was a pretty well-known person in the area. I was really proud of that. I was real proud of that. And I wanted to control everything. I was the HR manager for the H sites, which what we call the H sites, which was in Mosul. And I was busy. I was a workaholic. I was controlling everything. I was busy proving myself. I was doing all 4 of those obstacles. And one day, on Father's Day, 2006, my dad calls. He says, "Ange, what are you doing?" I said, "Hey, Dad, happy Father's Day." He's like, "Well, I just called you to tell you that I love you." And I'm looking at my computer with all the hundreds of emails, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. So I'm looking at my computer, and I'm half-heartedly listening to my father. And he says, "Well, it sounds like you're busy." I said, "Yeah, Dad, can I call you back a little bit later? I'm monitoring a situation right now. I'll call you later." He says, "Okay. I love you the most." "I love you too, Dad." That was the last time I ever spoke to my dad. Because on June 27th, he was coming home to be with my mother, who had been diagnosed that day with leukemia. And as he was turning, he was hit head on by a young gal, and it killed him instantly. My heart was broken. Heart was broken. I was so angry with myself. I was so caught up in me. I was so caught up in being something that I did not pay attention to the one person who loved me more than anyone. And I'm going to tell you, it took me years to forgive myself for that. Even now, every time I tell this story, there is still just a prick in my heart, because I let the wrong words, the wrong feelings, I let those dictate how I behaved. I eventually forgave myself for that. I eventually did. And I believe that all things work together for the good. Even though that was a very devastating and traumatic thing that happened, it made me press in and say, I'm going to do better. I'm going to learn how to be present. I'm going to learn how to be in the moment. I'm going to learn how to be my authentic self, because there's nothing wrong with me. And so, as I dug in, I found out over time that there are these little voices that whisper to us. It's something that I call inner critics. How many of you are familiar with those inner critics? Yeah, probably most of us are. Well, I'm going to show you a video, and I want you to see if you identify with any of these inner critics. Go ahead.
I'm smelling a bit of incompetency around here. Incompetency. I believe that you are incompetent. Someone call the competency police. Anyone ever tell you that life sucks? I'm here to discourage you so that you just don't go out and do something. You need to stop what you're doing. You're never going to be successful. Stop it. You're an idiot.
Must control everything. Everything is getting out of control. I have to control it. I have to control it. Can you take care of that for me? Oh, wait, let me show you how to do it. Here's how you do it. Well, just let me go ahead and do it.
What are you doing here? I don't think you fit. I'm the excluder.
The world would be so perfect if you could just do everything so perfectly. You must be perfect. Remember to be perfect, and everything will be perfect. You will have a perfect life and a perfect family. Excuse me, you're forgetting to be perfect. Don't forget. You must be perfect. You must be perfect. I told you to be perfect. Perfect.
Oh my God, what are you doing here? You're an imposter. These people are so much smarter than you. You just need to leave and go home.
Yep, you should have checked to make sure you had everything before you left, but you didn't. You should have, but you didn't. You know you should have helped those people. I mean, they are helpless and they're relying on you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
You gotta keep producing. Keep going. Keep doing more and more. Doing more and more. Keep doing more stuff. Yeah, that's it. More stuff. You're not enough. You can't do enough, so you gotta keep doing more so you can finally be enough. And then you can tell Mary that she needs to get up off of her butt and do something.
Okay, so that is about the extent of my acting skills. My daughter turned me on to Snapchat. I couldn't get what the name was, Snapface, Snapchat, but anyway, she turned that, and I did all those videos, and it's been a big hit ever since. But how many of you can relate to any of those inner critics? Yeah. Which one, and anybody can shout this out, which one stands out to you the most? Imposter syndrome? Perfectionist? The worrier. How about should Ann? You know you should have stayed late. Yeah, should Ann gets me all the time. Now you know that you need to stay behind and make sure everything's put up. Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, let's just distill this down in terms of influence and executive presence. Inner critics are real. They talk to us. We have a tendency to take on a lot of guilt and shame and condemnation that doesn't belong in our lives. And really what I help people to do is I help them to flip that mindset, to reframe that mindset. And I'm going to tell you the kind of mindset that you need to have in order to show up with executive presence. It's what I call the ABC mindset. Can you flip that slide, Tim? Today. To the next slide, the next slide. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you about the ABC mindset. It's abundance, belief, and courage. You have everything that you need. You have everything that you need. You don't need any more, you don't need any less. But you simply have to believe that. You have to believe that you have everything that you need, that you're valuable just as you are. You're designed to be a unique puzzle piece, but you have to have the courage in order to live that every day. And that takes work. That takes a lot of inside work. And executive presence is an inside-out job. It's an inside-out job, but then we have other people. You know, if we could just fix ourselves and work on ourselves, and that be it, it'd be wonderful. But then we go out and we connect with people. And so this is a two-party deal with executive presence. We're managing ourselves, but we're also managing perceptions every day. And I want to show you the 5 key influencers that you need to be aware of that you have the power to shift in your daily work, in your daily interactions, and your relationships. We've got your look, how you show up, how you sound, how you think, and the words you actually speak. So when we talk about your look, we're talking about the physical appearance. Now, you don't have to be a superstar model. As a matter of fact, that can be distracting. People won't hear your words because they're really fixated on how you look. But your look, I mean, the truth is that we are survival people. We were born to survive, and so we naturally, visually look for danger. So we're going to take things in visually. How you show up is about your body language, what you're saying in your nonverbal behavior. How you sound. How you sound can make all of the difference in the world. So if I come up to you and I say, "Hi, how you doing?" What's that do to you? It makes you want to run the other way. Something that I hear common to women in particular is we tend to speak in upswings. Hi, I'm Angie Nuttle, and I'm an executive business coach, and I'm going to be talking to you about executive presence today. So you see how I just did that upswing, that upswing? Managing that perception is managing your level of confidence, and this is something that you can change by simply incorporating downswings. Hi, I'm Angie Nuttle. I'm an executive business coach, and I teach business people how to show up with executive presence. So you see I'm more definitive. So the way that your voice sounds is critical. How you think. People generally are thinking in two different ways. You have your concrete thinkers versus your conceptual thinkers. Your concrete thinkers are going to say, yes, this is a remote in my hand. A conceptual thinker is going to say, that is the runway to the greatest presentation ever given. Which one are you, concrete or conceptual? Think about it. And then the words that you actually speak. So we can simplify this by putting this into three different categories. We've got our visual, our vocal, and our verbal aspects. This is something that I want you to go and look at your video later today and assess yourself. What do I notice about my body language? What do I notice about how I'm carrying myself in that video? How does my voice sound? And what are the words that I'm actually speaking? This is important to pay attention to because what research shows is that we have 100% of our focus divided amongst these three. And this is how important they are. Your visual outputs account for 55% of your overall impression. 55%. 38% your vocal. Now, this is why your words are really important. Words are not about quantity, it's about the quality of the words that you speak, because by the time somebody gets done evaluating you, they're really only hearing about 7, maybe 10% of your words. It's interesting. Well, you may say, all right, well, if I get my mindset under control and I build my confidence, I get my priorities in order, and I'm living according to my values, and I'm managing these 5 influencers, what about the person who stun guns me? Well, let me explain what stun gun means. Have you ever been in a meeting or you've been doing a presentation and a leader puts you on the spot and maybe even says something that's really harsh to you, and you're at risk for public humiliation, and you may not even know what to say in that moment because it's so shocking? Has anyone ever been through that? Yes, we see some hands raised high. I've been stun-gunned a number of times. And if you've been stun-gunned enough, you finally learn how to pull out some tools. You finally figured out, well, I need to do something about this. Well, I spent a lot of years in the defense industry, and I want to tell you a story about Security Greg. I was working for Northrop Grumman. I was on the East Coast, and we were building a leadership development program where we had all of the leaders leading these sessions. We taught them how to do it, and they would come in and facilitate, and it was a part of a change management effort that we were doing. Well, Security Greg did not like what we were doing. And he was constantly mad about the fact that we were pulling his resources to do this program. And one day, I'm walking down the hall, and I see him coming, and there are people all around, and he says, "Hey, I want to talk to you. I am tired of you pulling my people out of their jobs so that they can go facilitate this thing that you're doing. And I want you to know that this is wrong, and what you're doing is wrong." Now, what would you do? What would you do in this situation? I took a moment, and I said, "I appreciate what you're telling me. I'd like to take some time to process this because I'd like to be able to come back to you with a thoughtful response. Will you give me a few days to do that?" And he looked at me shocked. He says, "Okay, sure." So we go our separate ways. A few days later, I came back, and I said, "You know, Greg, I really appreciate where you're coming from. And what I would like to do is I'd like to work with you on the schedule because our CEO says that this is really important, and we need to be building leadership. Can we work together to do this?" And he said yes. So I tell you that story because here comes another proverb that I've learned to live by where executive presence is concerned. A soft answer turns away wrath. A soft answer turns away wrath. I've even used this on my husband. It works great. But also, autoresponders work. I work with people to create all kinds of autoresponders, but they have 3 ingredients: appreciate, buy time, and then circle back. Because if you don't circle back, then what? You blew it. Your credibility is shot. Autoresponders always have these 3 elements. And the one that we tend to leave out is the appreciation. And that is actually the most important part of responding. So, if you ever get stun-gunned, always have an autoresponder in your pocket. Always expect that the stun gun will happen and you will never be caught off guard again. This is one of many tools, but I wanted to share this one in particular with you today. And here's the truth. Giving away your power requires your permission. You can't control other people, and the sooner that you realize that, the more traction you're going to make with your presence. You can only control you and how you respond to people. But giving away your power, people cannot take your power from you. You can only give it. So if you're going to give away your power, you should choose wisely. And I have one more important thing to share with you, and that is that your presence matters. Your presence matters. Your presence matters. Your presence matters. Yours yours, all of you. Your presence matters. So if you've been thinking that it doesn't, I respectfully ask you to rethink that position. Your presence matters. You're not designed to fit, and you're not designed to have everybody as your target audience. People are waiting for you to take on that ABC mindset: abundance, belief, and courage. They're waiting for you to step into that courageous place. One final note. I told you the story about what happened with my dad and how that was such a challenging situation. Well, my grandma Dixie, whom I love very much, passed away a few weeks ago from complications from COVID. And here is a woman that taught me so much about being fully present, being able to listen and to be in relationship. And I look at my relationship with her and I think, I got a second chance with her. And this time I did it right. I was fully present with her to the very end. And I'm so thankful that even though I made some terrible, terrible mistakes, that I learned from those. And you can too. Maybe there are times when you haven't spoken up when you needed to. Maybe you needed to influence in a situation and you chose not to for whatever reason. Now is your time. Now is your time. My name is Angie Nuttle. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a dog walker, I'm a pooper scooper upper. I'm an artist, I'm a woman, and I am a person who believes that at the heart of executive presence is relationship. That is what matters. It doesn't matter what you do, it's who you are and who you choose to be. Thank you so much for having me today.